Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cold War Prepper. My name is Lee. Sorry for having to go live. Once again, I've tried using my recording system, and after 4 takes at 25 minutes each, I've given up on trying to record. So I just figured I'd go live, and with a live, I can. It's going to be downloaded as a recorded instrument anyway, and I don't have to worry about editing and everything else. So here I am on a new one. So the title here is a G.K. Chesterton quote, and gosh, if you don't have it, get his collected works. Okay, just a phenomenal guy. He's kind of like a cross between Will Rogers and C.S. Lewis. But anyhow, his quote is, "The only thing that's necessary for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing." And let me tell you, this is a call to arms. I want you to get involved. I want you to get down, participate in your local school board, participate in your city, county government, participate in your state government, get active. They are winning. Let me give you a couple things to ponder. What did I do with my book? Oh, there it is right there. W.C. Clausen. Cleon Skousen wrote this book back in the 50s and gave it to Congress. And in here, he has the everything that the Communist Party, the 1945 Communist Party USA goals. And so I would like to read to you goal number 17, and it's get control of the schools, use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda, soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' associations, put the party line in textbooks. Basically, we have allowed that to happen. If you take a look at what's going on in schools today, what they're teaching, what they're not teaching, attendance awards instead of, there was a school district here recently that refused to announce who the valedictorian and salutatorian were because they didn't want to hurt the feelings of people who didn't study as hard. I mean, it's getting crazy. We've got to get active. There's a thing going on right now that's been going on, oh gosh, since the 60s about, and we heard it quite often here just recently. And they said, you're destroying our democracy. Well, yes, we intend to destroy your democracy because we are not a democracy. Hello, Coffee First. We are not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. A democracy is a mob rule thing. The majority wins. And I'll tell you what, they only accept the majority wins when they're in the majority. If they're in the minority, they'll scream like a stuck pig. You can't do that. That's wrong. That's immoral. Think of your adjective, your adverb that they want to use to tell you how wrong we are if we're in the majority and we say you can't do this or you must do that. They only say democracy when they are in the majority and they are the ones who have won. So let's get back to a constitutional republic. Let me tell you what's going on in our society and some of the outside influences that there are. And then I want to come back and talk about the education system again towards the end. Let's talk about the Great Reset and what are their goals. And so number one is to instill fear. You see, there's this model of that you cannot rebuild something, you cannot reconstruct something until you destruct something. You have to destroy it in order to rebuild it. You can't just build upon, you have to destroy and then rebuild. So step number one of the Great Reset is create the chaos, create the destruction. So step two, they talk about the human beings that are involved with that. And the first thing they have to do is they have to demoralize the population. We've seen that going on since the 60s, free love and all this other kinds of stuff. The demoralization, the war against Christianity, against Judaism, even against Islam. Any organized religion, there's a war against it in the United States. And so once they've done that, shamed you into, well, you have to appreciate other people. They've even gone so far as to redefine normal. So it used to be normal was a scientific term. And if you took the population and you said, are you A or B? And then you could numerically assign a number for that. You could put it into a standard bell shaped curve. And then you had the median, which was the average, the center. 50% of the population was less than, 50% was more than. Then you could come out three standard deviations. And within three standard deviations of the mean, that was 66% of the total population of the US was average. Anything that was outside of that 66% was considered abnormal or non-average. Then at the extremes, you had the abnormal, right? The extremely abnormal. Well, it's to the point now to where those extremes, that 1% of the population on each extreme, is now being forcibly included into normal so that everything is normal, nothing is abnormal. Let me get to that in this world juncture that we're in. So first we shame you. Then we have to dehumanize you. And so then after we dehumanize you, then we create this artificial crisis. Remember, you have to destroy in order to rebuild. Then they come in with the solution and they're going to rebuild. And that rebuilding is going to be called normalization. How often have you heard the new norm? That's what they're talking about. So from there, what they want to do is they want to create a controlled world of smaller numbers of more perfect people. More perfect being their definition, not ours, because we aren't the more perfect. I can guarantee you that. So then, along with that small population of more perfect people, they can have a sustainable, inclusive environment. And we aren't part of that. No, we just don't fit their model. So let's move on to the next subject. Let's talk about two social work professors from Columbia University back in my days, back in the late 60s, two guys by the name of Cloward and Piven. So they wrote this to be presented to the 1966 Democratic Convention. But their whole theory was that if they could inundate state and local governments to the point to where they could bankrupt them or cause emergencies because they had so many people enrolled in the social welfare programs, that they would drive the city, county, state bankrupt and force the federal government to come in and save those people. So that was the whole thought process. Okay. Think about that whole thought process about inundating, swarming, overwhelming our current social structures, our current shelters for the homeless, food, whatever. Think of 2 million people being added to our social welfare structure every year since we've had a new regime who basically negated the control we had at the border, so that now that we have all these people coming in, and we're going to have to teach them English too. Do you think that's being done in accordance with Cloward Piven, so that now they're bankrupting the local entities in order to have federal government take control? Hello, who's your prepping nurse? I was talking about you today at the farmer's market to an ER nurse who happened to be on duty at Darnell Army Hospital during the Major Hassan shootings. And so, gosh, I would love to have the two of you into an interview at the same time and pick both your brains. But anyhow, so Cloward Piven, I think, is coming back to roost as far as inundating our systems. And so what do they really want to do? They really want to have all of the power at the federal level and none at the state and local level. Hello, Linda Bob. So anyhow, so how are we going to accomplish this? That's the key. Well, we have to understand a couple things. So let's take a look at another document that I really, really love. And I keep losing things. This document here. And I would like for you to pay attention to two specific things. First, I would like you to pay attention to the Article 1, Section 8, And that is what we call the enumerated powers of Congress. So the only thing, I'll give you one exception, that Congress is allowed to do is specified in Article 1, Section 8. Can they run a national welfare system? No. Can they run Social Security? No. Can they, what else is, can they have an Obamacare, a nationwide health system that you must pay into? Not according to Article 1, Section 8. You see, because if the power is not explicitly given to Congress under Article 1, Section 8, then you have to go to the 9th and 10th Amendments. And the 10th Amendment says that anything that is not given to the federal government is reserved to the states. Okay, so that becomes a states' rights issue, and I'll show you another case where that has recently come to reality in the court's decisions. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to focus all of this power at the federal level and take it away from the states and everything else. Now, we saw that happen earlier with the 17th Amendment. So if you'll remember, this is, if you take a look at the way, especially Article 1 was written, you had the House of Representatives elected by the people, you had the Senate that was appointed by the legislatures of the states. And that way it gave the states their own representative to states' rights to the federal government. Then along comes the 17th Amendment. And what that does is that takes away the states' appointing of the senators and made the senators representatives of the people so that they're elected by the people. So now the people have the House of Representatives and the Senate, and the state has no one. So the 10th Amendment, for all intents and purposes, or the ability of the states to exercise their federalist authority, is null and void because they have no means to exercise that authority because of the 17th Amendment. It's basically negated the 10th Amendment. So let's take a look at one, and let's get emotions out of this. Let's talk strictly law, okay? So nowhere in Article 1, Section 8 does it give Congress the authority to regulate, define, limit, not limit, guarantee the right of anything. The word abortion does not exist, okay? So if we read the Constitution, it says if it's not in Article 1, Section 8, it doesn't give Congress that authority, then where does that authority belong? It belongs to the 10th Amendment, the states. So along comes Roe v. Wade, and Roe v. Wade said, oh, we're going to make a decision that this is legal across the entire United States. So the question is, number one, did they have the jurisdiction? Number two, does the Constitution give them the authority to make that ruling? Where in the Constitution do they assume that responsibility? Where in the Constitution are they assuming the responsibility that the original Roe v. Wade decision was made based upon the Constitution? It wasn't. So Dobbs is not a question of abortion. It's not a question of morality, immorality, your rights, babies' rights. It's not a question of any of that. It's a question of, did the Supreme Court have the authority and the jurisdiction in the first place to make that decision? And no, they did not. So Dobbs fixed that. And now we have it back where it belongs, in the legislatures of your state, so that you as a citizen can elect the representatives who will have the influence in your state legislature to say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, please represent me, please make it that way for me. So that's kind of where it is, okay? And that's where we need to be. And we were going back in that direction a little bit, and then along comes this administration, and things have kind of changed a little bit. Here's my perception of law. There's a speed limit sign on the freeway, and it says speed limit 55. And you're driving 55, and all of a sudden you see the lights behind you, and somebody pulls you over. And when they pull you over, they say, we're going to write you up a $120 fine for speeding. You say, wait a minute, I was doing 55, speed limit's 55. Oh no, we interpret that as 35. It doesn't matter what's written. What matters is how I interpret it. Does that make sense? How would we know how they interpret the law if it's still written one way, but they are using their own individual interpretation to enforce it? And that's where we kind of are under the current system. So what we see is, and there's an awful lot of terms. We try, if you can't win the argument, slander the other person. Okay. So instead of being able to discuss this and say, here's what the law says, show me where I'm wrong, we say, oh, you racist. Oh, you fascist. Oh, you Nazi. Well, we don't define those terms. And I think that quite often when we try to define those terms, we define them in extremely limited ways. If you look at Wikipedia, it'll say a fascist is an extreme rightist. What is an extreme rightist? We don't define what left and right is. So let me give you the typical definition of left and right. Left is total government control, big government, lots of rules and regulations. Extreme right is anarchy, no rules, no regulations. Kind of slightly, so if we say extreme right is the right coach on the first baseline, and first base is probably the right and third base is left, and then you got third base coach on on the other side, and then where we function best is when we have a government that is somewhere in between shortstop and second base, but preferably right on second base itself. When we have a more centrist government, is when we actually have the best. Okay. And as a matter of fact, there was a recent meme that was put out by Elon Musk, and he says he still has the same political views he had 10 years ago. The problem is that his party has left him, that they have gone so far left that he is now considered a rightist. But if we take that and we say, okay, anarchy is the first base coach, a dictatorship is the third base coach. We want to be somewhere probably around first base man or second base man. Or second base person, if you want to be on that leftist leaning thing where we have to identify genders. So when we're kind of over there, then what we have is we have the rule of the majority with the protection of written law called the Constitution, instead of just majority rules. But what we see is a fascist government, as it was envisioned by Benito Mussolini, was a form of a totalitarian government with some ease in the capitalistic society. So we wanted to have all the power vested in Il Duce, the leader. And Il Duce then had his oligarchy around him. Well, the oligarchy basically were all the big manufacturers. And so what he said was, here's what you are going to produce. Here is how you will produce it. Here is what you will charge for it. Does that sound kind of familiar today? So, whereas, in a free capital society, they're free to produce junk. I mean, Japan, if you take a look at the stuff that Japan put out post World War II, it was stamped metal, and it was unbelievable. It was pure junk, but it was inexpensive. And so we consumed a lot of it. They made a profit. Then they can invest that into better and better quality stuff, to where now I would say Japanese products are probably the highest quality made in the world. So we have that free capital that allows you to start off doing one thing and then progress towards another. If you're producing something that people are dying taking it, your consumer base is going to rapidly shrink once it's found out that your product kills. Okay. So I would argue that maybe government control until you got to that point might have been okay, but we have to say, at what point is there too much and at what point is there too little government intervention? We don't know. But government intervention in itself is more on the fascist side than it is on the capitalist or constitutional republic side. So what we see right now is, I'm not the fascist. If we use this definition, we're saying that the people who want to control means of production, what we produce and how we produce it, electric vehicles, no more production of hydrocarbon fossil fuels here in the US, that we have to, because it's potentially dangerous. So instead, we have to go to countries like Nicaragua and Venezuela, where the production is far dirtier than what we do here. The damage to our environment is far worse by allowing them to do more than what we are doing. And yet I'm the fascist. That does not make sense to me. So let me go to another example of education and how we need to get involved. We have to please get involved. Find out about your local school board meeting. Find out about your city council meeting. Get down to your county meeting, whatever kind of county government you have. Here we have a county judge who's in charge, an elected judge. But I want to encourage you to get involved, because we no longer teach civics in school. We no longer teach cursive writing. We no longer teach grammar. People say, please call myself instead of please call me. People say, or understand the differences among TO, TOO, and TWO, or THERE, THEY apostrophe RE, or THERE, or THEIR. I mean, our school system is failing us on a humongous proportion. We need to get it back. We need to have it do what it needs to do. So let me give you an example. My wife was a teacher. Here in Texas, we have the Texas STAR test. So at the end of the year, you have to pass this test in order to go to the next class, the next grade. Although that's being questioned, right? Because I don't know. Did you see the news? There was a school district in Indiana. They refused to tell who the valedictorian and salutatorian were for the class because they didn't want to hurt other people's feelings who didn't study quite as hard. Unbelievable. But anyhow, so my wife's teaching a class, and she came home fairly upset. I said, what's wrong? She says, you aren't going to believe this. And I said, what's that? She says, well, today we were supposed to study the Constitution and the Supreme Court in U.S. history class. And so the teacher said, if the question Marbury v. Madison appears on the test, your answer is judicial review. Now, in my opinion, this is the single most paramount Supreme Court decision that has ever been made in 1803. So here's what happened. We had John Adams was our second president, and he was, and the elections happened. He was getting ready to transition out of office, and Thomas Jefferson was coming in. So, and let's see if you can't see the relevancy and the parallels between this transition of power and 21st century transitions of power. So there was a Supreme Court justice position open. So John Adams, 2 months before he left office, nominated Marshall as the Supreme Court Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Senate approved him. Everything went fine. Marshall's now the Supreme Court Justice. There were 42 vacant federal district court judgeships open. So in his last week in office, John Adams nominated 48 people to become judges, and all 48 of them were approved by the Senate. They wrote their commissions, they got them all bound up, they sealed them, put the stamp on them, started sending them out. 38 of the 42 made it out before the end of the day, and the next day, Thomas Jefferson became president. Thomas Jefferson says, I don't want those 4 to be judges because they lean in John Adams' direction. I want to appoint those judges. So he withdrew the appointments. Well, one of the guys, his name was Marbury, said, wait a minute, I was nominated, approved, appointed, commissioned. I want my commission. I want to be able to be a federal court judge. And so Jefferson says, no. So he had appointed Madison, who later would become a president, as a Secretary of State. And so Madison withheld the commission for Marbury. So Marbury sued. And he went straight to the Supreme Court. Well, at that time, in 1803, the Supreme Court met in the basement of the Capitol. We didn't have a Supreme Court building yet. So the questions that Marshall had to answer in this was, number one, do they have jurisdiction? Okay. Is this something that the Supreme Court can make a relevant decision on? Because remember, our progress is you go to a lower court first, and only if you challenge that court's decision does it go up to the Supreme Court. Well, there's this thing called Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution. And if you look at paragraph 2 of Article 3, Section 2, it says that certain people appointed, approved by the Senate, have the authority to go directly to the Supreme Court as the originating court if their beef is against the government. Okay. And that's what Marbury did. So Marshall had to say, yes, we do have jurisdiction on this case because he is an appointed, approved judge, and he is suing the U.S. government. Therefore, we are the originating court. Question number 2. The court had to answer, did Marbury, were his rights violated? And if they were violated, is there anything we as a court can do to restore his rights? So the court said, yeah, he was violated. He wasn't given his commission. And so what we as a Supreme Court can do is demand that the federal government give him his fully entitled commission. And so they gave him his commission. Now, number 3 comes along, and it says, could the Supreme Court solve the problem and create a precedent that would then be interpreted for the rest of history? So I think that the precedent that the Supreme Court set is phenomenal. It's fantastic. It is outstanding. It is superior. So let me read to you what Marshall wrote as the he wrote the ruling for the majority. So it says, and this is his last sentence in his decision, the Constitution of the United States confirms and strengthens the principle supposed to be essential to all written constitutions, that a law repugnant to the Constitution is void, and that courts, as well as all other departments, are bound by that instrument. So basically, what judicial review says is if you are, let me find my, there I am. So what judicial review says is if if there is something that is contrary to the Supreme Court, to the Constitution, the Constitution is the law of the land, and you cannot have a law at any level of any government below that that is going to be contrary to the Constitution. Let me find where I am here. There we go, so I can see the. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you, the supremacy of the Constitution, some of the things that are going on with the Great Reset, establishing fear and chaos so that they can put in a new norm, Cloward Piven, which is creating chaos and fear. It's overwhelming our social system so we can have federal intervention, federal supremacy, overruling states' rights, and that our education system sucks. We are no longer teaching our children how to think. We're no longer teaching them how to be critically assessive of things that are going on around them. Instead, we are indoctrinating them and filling their heads with what to believe, and not a way of identifying what truth is and what truth isn't, what law is and what law isn't. Let me give you another good one. There's a bill right now that's been introduced into the House just in the last day or two since the new House has come in, and it basically wants to do away with income tax, the 16th Amendment, I think it is. Let me check. Let me make sure I've got my poo-poo together in one burn bag here, but I think that income tax is the 16th Amendment. Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source is derived. 16th Amendment. Yay. Every once in a while I look out and I'm right. But anyhow, so other than Article 1, Section 8, I told you there was one other place where the federal government can do things, and that's the 16th Amendment. They can tax your income. So there's a bill right now that what they want to do is what they call the fair tax. And we're going to do kind of like a European value added tax. So that basically what happens is if I want to buy something, and it's going to be at 20%, let's say. So if I want to buy something that costs $1, then it's going to actually cost, the price tag is going to say $1.20. 20 cents of that goes to the federal government, $1 goes to the manufacturer, to retailer, or whatever. So what we're doing basically is we're substituting a form of sales tax for income tax. Now, what that does is that says I buy Great Value brand at $1, so I'm going to pay $1.20. You choose to buy Donna Karen of New York, and you pay $100. So that means now you're going to pay $20 in taxes in comparison to my 20 cents in taxes because you exercised your right to buy something of a higher brand name, of a higher value. Therefore, your tax on that is going to be higher than the tax that I pay. And that I consider to be a fair tax. So, having a discussion around the table and with some friends, and one guy says, well, I'm already paying enough in taxes. And my thought was, yeah, we all are way overtaxed. On average in the US, the average US citizen pays about 40% of their total income on taxes. And, gas tax, property tax, sales tax, income tax, you name it, tax, breathing tax, drinking water tax, looking at the sky tax. I mean, we are taxed to death. And we are. I admit, especially when the money is not used the way we want. $1.7 trillion budget, 400 billion goes to a country so we can help them defend their borders. And at the same time, they deny 1 penny to the United States to defend their own borders. How can that be? What are we thinking? It's unbelievable where we are going and how we are doing it. But anyhow, said, well, maybe that'll offset my property tax. No, it won't. You see, we don't teach civics anymore. We don't understand that there's layers of government, that the federal government uses income taxes as primary means of funding, that the state uses sales tax, whatever, they have their own taxes, but predominantly sales tax. Some states use a state income tax. Cities use apportionment taxes, a portion of sales tax. Usually the sales tax, the vast majority of it goes to the city you're in rather than to the state. Then you've got highway use taxes, consumption taxes, gas taxes. Do you know who the number one profiteer on a gallon of gas is? Who makes the most money off of 1 gallon of gas? Federal government via taxation. And yet they sit there and tell us that it should be against the law for the oil companies to make a profit. It's crazy. But anyhow, so it was obvious to me that this person didn't understand that there's different layers of government and that each level has its own form of funding. And that form of funding is separate and distinct from the other forms of funding. So thank you for bearing with me today. Let me go back and see if I can't catch some of your comments and questions and things like that. And sorry, once again, I tried recording this. It was 25 minutes when I started out. I've turned it into 33. My recorder wouldn't record it, so I had to go live so that I could record it because YouTube will put it into a stream now, and it'll go into my videos as something that is there. So, hi, Lori, welcome. Let me see. Coffee first, welcome. Let me see. And so Lori's responding back, or Who's Your Prepping Nurse is responding back about getting together with the other ER nurse. I think that would be a very interesting interview to get the two of them together on there. So Lori's having chat issues again. Thank you for promoting the thumbs up. I appreciate that, Lori. Thank you, LB Crypto. I appreciate that. It comes from paying attention for 70 years. And Dove Season 1 on 91, I hope you're saying that the original Roe v. Wade was an unconstitutional ruling, and I agree with you 100%. Dave Simmons, welcome. That's a new name to me. Shenanigans, welcome. Coffee First and Speak. What a great follower. Thank you for always that there are some of you who are just always there, and thank you so much for that. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Um, LB Crypto, thank you. I appreciate that. I normally don't get into crypto. I normally don't get into politics. I normally don't get into discussing things like I have today. I want to be more of an upbeat channel. I want to be somebody who's providing solutions. How do we make it through this rather than somebody who's pointing out problems? But, I think that the problems that we're seeing now are at the point now to where I have to encourage, and I don't care which side you're on. I really don't. I think that it behooves all of us to let our feelings, let our belief systems, let our emotions be shown. Let's let's go out there and let's support whichever side you support and support it avidly. Um, we need to get involved. Remember, G.K. Chesterton, he said, the only way for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. And I think we've been doing nothing for too long. And they think that that's the norm now. And we need to change that norm. Yes, and we're under freeze warming here too, Lori. As a matter of fact, I told Helen I wanted to go to Sam's and get some more of those heat canisters for my Instafire heating system. And yeah, so yeah, she works as a substitute teacher in Florida. I was president of PTA for the middle school my daughter went to, and I had a great. We had a very conservative principal. Things were outstanding. It was great. We got away from indoctrination and got more towards education. He started taking the kids out, showing them how to use fire steels and a little bit of bushcrafting and stuff like that. The school district didn't like that, so he kind of moved on to a school in Colorado where they really encouraged that. It's where he was teaching people, this is how you write a check. This is how you check your oil in your car. This is how you do bushcraft stuff. Practical skills for living, how to judge things, how to make a decision instead of just accepting the party line. Um, let me see. Yes, and then in New York, Coffee First says no kid left behind as well. You get an attendance trophy. Um, let me see. Kids are so disrespectful to sub teachers. I got news for you, Lori. They're disrespectful to everybody. Um, I had a middle school girl laugh at me and say I couldn't do anything to make them behave. It's terrible, and she was absolutely right. Um, my wife was in a Title I school, so she was a special ed teacher for a economically disadvantaged school. And one of her students came in one day really, really upset and just crying. She was late to school, as a matter of fact. And so Helen tried to, give her a little bit of consolation. She says, I don't know why they had to arrest my brother. He just shot that police officer in the leg. And that's where we are. So she couldn't understand why they had to arrest her brother for shooting a police officer in the leg. I think that teachers are underpaid. I think that teachers are, I think that the worst healthcare systems that I have seen are in healthcare and education. We don't do a good job of taking care of them. And I think we overpay the administrators and we spend way too much money on buildings and other amenities. I have seen multi-million-dollar programs brought into the school system, mandatory teaching for all the teachers. They have to go in and not get paid for it on 3 days to learn a new educational system. Then it gets laid off and never used. And then the next year they do it all over again. There is so much waste of money in our school systems, in our political systems, in our government. It is pitiful. Hey, Shenanigans, you're quite welcome. Thank you so much. I hope I'm not turning people off. I'm kind of passionate about this. So let me see. Hi, Lee and everybody from Rapture Prepping. Hi, Rapture Prepping. So what happened, and I will tell you, I use Photoshop. for my recordings. And I have had problems that I do Photoshop and I will record a video 4 or 5 times and it doesn't record. And so since this one was 25 minutes and I'd already tried 4 times, that's 100 minutes, an hour and a half. I had wasted out of my Saturday. So I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go live. YouTube Studio is going to record that for me. It'll go back onto my system as a live, and people can watch it that way. But yeah, I just got tired. I've got to find a way to record this. I have this other system that I purchased called, let me see here, Open Shot. And so I bought it. And after I bought it, now I record a video and I can't find where the video goes. It just goes into the ether somewhere. So I can't call it down to edit it. So Herdy's coming down here from Dallas again in a couple weeks, and he's going to help me. And we're going to sit here and work on recording and editing and everything else. So hopefully I will be far more technologically advanced here in February than I am in January. Well, yeah, and you know what? When I was in high school in El Paso and it would get up to 112 degrees, we had no air conditioning either. We had fans, we had open windows. Now, I will agree. One of the things that I will spend money on, if it's spent wisely, is for the protection of our children. I do think that there are way too many crazies. Remember that back in the 80s, we determined that it was cruel and unusual punishment if a person was incapable of living in society and had a mental condition that they were incapable of living in society, that to put them into an institution was cruel and unusual punishment. We let them all go. Voila, massive homeless camps erupted. Crime rates went up and everything else. And now we see some of those people, taking retaliation against their teachers, against their schoolmates and everything else. I believe if we're going to spend a penny on any improvements in the schools, let's improve the safety of our children in the schools. Then, if you want to teach ideology, and I don't care if it's right ideology or left ideology, you are not there to teach our children an ideology. You are there to teach our children a subject. You are there to teach our children how to think. How to rationalize, how to look at facts and come up with a judgment of their own. You are not there to teach them what to think. And if you don't want to teach them what to think, go somewhere else. Get out of my school district. But anyhow, that's one of my hot buttons. Thank you, Shenanigans. I appreciate that. Yeah, a little lone prepper, the kids, not they kids. Yeah, absolutely. And I got on that, that we aren't teaching grammar anymore. And it's terrible. I can't believe how in the world did we come up with myself as being anything other than a reflexive pronoun? I call myself, you call yourself, but you don't call myself. You call me. But that's, I would also like to see the word literally made illegal. Literally is used too much, literally. Or literally is literally used too much. There we go. How about that? I would like to teach mathematics in schools. I would like to see it so that people understand the difference between $sign 0.95 and 0.95 cent sign. One is 95/100ths of a dollar. The other is 95/100ths of a cent. So if you want 95 cents, there is no decimal unless it's $0.95. Then it's 95 cents. But when you have 95 cents, there is no decimal. But people don't understand that either. I use Vlogstar for my videos. Oh, wow. $2 a month, huh? I will have to, thank you, Lori. I will have to try that. Is it good on a Mac? Because my daughter convinced me to get a Mac. I've gone away from the old, what did I have last time? I had they're out of Houston. Anyhow, one of those not MS-DOS anymore. What's it? Windows, a Windows machine. There we go. Yeah, it is to the point where parents and I have a hard time as a grandparent trying, if I get called and said pick up the children, I have a hard time as a grandparent, a very hard time picking up a child. So yes, and they make it easier for the bad guy and harder for the good guy, and that's the same thing that they want to do now with these changes to the Second Amendment. These new gun laws. They want to restrict the ability of the good people to defend themselves while making it the same because they aren't going to have any effect on the bad guys and their ability to acquire a weapon and use it. Okay, I'll have to check into that. Absolutely. Coffee First Then Speak says they have more security on paper money than on children. Shows where priorities are. Absolutely. Um, you know, and one of the things, and this is kind of a current event too. Remember that I spent 21 years in the intelligence field, intelligence collection, analysis, and reporting. Man, I would go to jail if I put anything of value in the same safe that I had classified information. That was a big no-no. You don't put classified information and anything of value in the same garage, in the same safe, in the same file drawer. You just don't do that. And so we can see where priorities are there, and things aren't being equally applied there either. Coffee First, and I'm doing directly from YouTube Studio here, so I don't can't show the what I'm showing on the with StreamYard. I can highlight what the person's saying. I can't do that, but Coffee First Then Speak has a good one. It says, and he's addressing it to Franklin Myers. Yes, a friend worked at his front door. She would buzz them in, then check the IDs, and they're already in. So what good does it do to check the ID afterwards? So yes, absolutely. So you want to have your security check before your control point because you do the security check first to ensure that they don't have any weapons, that they have the proper ID. Then you signal to somebody else who has control to the control point access so that they can get in. That's the way we do it in the Army, but that's the way that makes sense. They don't allow me to go in the library to see what kind of materials are being shown to the children. That's a big discussion here in the greater Austin area right now, as some of the parents don't want certain things available to their children in the library. And those people who believe in majority rule are really upset because the majority doesn't want those things in the library. And so, I mean, now they're getting extremely emotional about it, but it have it, I'm calling it Whataburger government. Have it your way. That's all. They just want to have it their way. They don't care how they get it. They just want to have it their way. Um, so yeah, I will tell you that I had a soldier walk out of the skiff, and he had one piece of paper on him, and I vouched for him and everything else, and we went to trial. Had he been found guilty, and we were able to get it mitigated, but had he been found guilty, it would have been 2 years in for one document. And so that shows you the disparity between what they do to us as soldiers compared to a vice president. So or a secretary of state who has it on a server and on a cell phone and then wipes the cell phone and then smashes it with a sledgehammer. Had one of my soldiers done that, they would have been in jail for destruction of government property. So there is an inappropriate application of the law to between these entitled people and we peons, and that's wrong, and that needs to be fixed. uh, yep. So anyhow, any other questions or any other thoughts before I shut this down? Thank you so much for your time on a Saturday. I need to. There are a couple things I need to do. I need to get my hour in at the gym today. So far, I've been able to keep that goal. I've been doing the gym 6 days a week, and I'm also up to date on all of my prayers. So I said I wanted to do the Chaplet of the Divine Mercy every day. I want to do a rosary every day. I've been keeping that. That has been doing fantastic. I'm doing the catechism in a year. I'm up to date on that. Every one of my goals, I am up to date on. I can't believe it. So, just thank God that I've got the strength and the stamina and the mentality to do what I'm doing. And, thank God that I have the physical ability to do what I'm doing and the support of my family. It's phenomenal. And your support. Golly, y'all are so fantastic. So I guess that's kind of it. So I add a little farewell to my normal farewell on my lives. So on my lives, I like to end it before I get to my standard farewell with Numbers chapter 6, verses 24, 25, and 26. And if I can find my eyes, and you would think that by the time that I had done this so many times, I would have it memorized. I'm going to have to go by memory because I can't see my glasses. I need my glasses to find my glasses. The Lord bless you and keep you, and the Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So remember, we're all in this together. One country. As divided as we are one country, one constitution, one set of rules, one set of laws. We're all in that set of laws together. We're in this together. Be kind, polite, and respectful to each other. It's okay to disagree. Don't get emotional. Don't call names. If you can't win the argument, don't attack the other person because you don't have the wherewithal to come up with a statement that declares why you believe where you are. It's not their fault, it's yours. You're the one who's falling short. So be kind, polite, and respectful to them because they know where they're coming from. Because togetherness is the key, and that's how we're going to get out of this. God bless y'all. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.